Yeah, so firstly, like in the past, I was scammed for like around 20,000. And then around a couple months later, I was scammed for like an additional $10,000. And that was pretty difficult. And I was able to eventually understand like the banking system like much better. I don't think I ever would have created this company. It wouldn't have even crossed me. Putting that into normal size things you can do on a daily basis. So as long as I'm working hard towards those goals, even if I come across failures, long term, I know I will be successful because most people are going throughout life without a compass. They don't even know where they're going.
Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their lives, inviting us all to reflect and connect. Today we're joined by Aidan Sowa, a dynamic entrepreneur who transformed his life from being buried in debt to co-founding Zoto Dialer, a powerful tool for sales teams. Aidan's journey is a testament to resilience and innovation, and is passionate about helping others find their voice in a crowded marketplace. Let's dive into Aidan's story and discover the wisdom that has guided him along. Can you tell us your name and what your favorite quotes or philosophy or lesson is?
Yeah. So my name is Aidan Sowa, and my favorite philosophy is like by like Winston Churchill, which is like the success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm.
Oh, how long have you had this philosophy, or have you known these quotes from Winston Churchill?
Oh, many years, and it's something which kind of like inspires me to keep going when things get difficult.
Why do you think you resonate deeply with these quotes?
Because I've went through like a lot of like failures in my own life when it comes to like either like scams or like, things stop working in terms of like marketing and like different aspects in terms of like failures. But each time it sort of it sort of helped me. I didn't see it at the time, but long term it really helped me. And so many people in the exact same situation as me essentially gave up.
W- Would you
And
would you be
yeah, go on.
would you be kind enough to share a couple of these failures with us?
Yeah, so firstly, like in the past, I was scammed for like around 20,000. And then around a couple months later, I was scammed for like an additional $10,000. And that was pretty difficult. And I was able to eventually understand like the banking system like much better. So that way, like, I could prevent that particular scenario from happening. But essentially it was business deals which went wrong where people just didn't deliver any types of services. And they technically still owe me money. But from that point of view, like I learned, like, you always gotta have to have like, a decent amount of money in savings, and you gotta really be careful who you trust because there's so many people out there who seem trustworthy. And even if someone delivers a service like once, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a trustworthy person. Like I've had people who I consider to be friends, like really good friends, and they have scammed me for like a lot of money. And it's just always about like verifying them, like making sure like, okay, this person is legitimate, but are they still legitimate? And those types of things can change.
Oh, oh, okay, that's one. That's one. Thank you for that first one. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the other one?
Yeah, in terms of like other types of things, I do like a lot of email marketing in my business, right? So when it comes to that, we've had like a lot of situations where email has stopped working, and I've had to adjust. So that particular failure of like email marketing stopped working for me helped me really to diversify in terms of like, okay, email marketing is never good to rely on a single channel. So even though it didn't seem like at the time, um that failure was actually a great thing because now I'm well diversified into multiple marketing channels. So if one channel is down 1 month, I have multiple backups.
Oh, oh, okay, okay. Oh, you say success is the ability to move from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that this quote can be subject to misinterpretation?
It could be, yeah. I mean, like, for example, if someone's at like gambling, right? If someone's at a casino and they just keep gambling and they're constantly enthusiastic, that's pretty stupid. And I would say they're probably never going to succeed. But if you're pushing towards something with like a good end goal, with the goal to help people and stuff like that, then it could be very effective. And also, you can't be like delusional and stuff in what you're doing. You have to be able to adjust. Like I have taken careful adjustments in terms of like everything I do. So I take it as a learning lesson, an expensive learning lesson sometimes, but a learning lesson nonetheless. So you got to be able to adjust in life and be able to figure out like, okay, this doesn't work. How do I adjust to make it work? And things change. Like I've had several types of niches of customers who have bought from me in the past, like tons of niches, and all of a sudden things changed. For example, real estate agents used to buy a lot of stuff from us. They don't really as much anymore because like that industry is extremely poor, at least at the current moment in time. So you got to be able to adjust. It's extremely important and not just give up and say, like, oh, this doesn't work anymore. Yeah, so I do several things. For one, I run a marketing company. And what we do is we help people get featured in different news outlets, such as like USA Today, Forbes, Entrepreneur, different news outlets. And I also run a dialing software. So this is like a cold call solution where we're dialing like seven, eight, even 14 different lines at the same time in order to maximize the number of people which someone could talk to on an hourly basis, which can generate them like a lot of leads. So that's in simple form what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, going back to the quotes, each time I just say success is the ability to move from failure to failure, um, without losing enthusiasm. What would you say is like the most recent um thing that appeared to be like a failure, and then all you needed to do was pivot a bit and just move a bit, and then the success eventually came up. But if you had maybe probably stopped working on the thing
Mhm.
at that point in time, you probably wouldn't have discovered or kind of like strike gold in that scenario.
Yeah, so there was a relatively recent scenario, not necessarily as big of like a failure, but essentially what led me to even start the dialing software business to begin with was I paid a bunch of money to this software for like a dialing software, and it was a complete loss. Like I made absolutely no money. And that particular failure in of itself was actually what created enthusiasm for me to really want to create something which works. Because I eventually realized it wasn't just me who was going through this pain of like trying to figure out what types of companies really work. It was many people, and that's the reason why I developed the software, mostly just for myself initially, but then it became much more, and now we have like actual customers using it. And if it wasn't for that failure, I don't think I ever would have created this company. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind.
Wow. So this company you currently running was born out of an idea for you to solve your problem, and then you're like, "Whoa, wait a minute! This problem I just solved. Other people have this problem. Why not just turn it into a business?"
Exactly, exactly. Because I mean, like, oftentimes people think they're all alone, and that's like the common thing in entrepreneurship. But you're often not alone. There's other people who are going through the same types of struggles as you, and if you can solve that problem, well, that's a successful business.
Yeah,
That's just the way life is. Business is all about solving problems. And if you can solve a problem,
and
well,
getting paid.
enough, you can become very successful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, business people most of the time they are change makers. Just the only difference between a businessman and a man who is doing charity work is that the charity work person solves a problem but doesn't get paid, but a businessman solves a
Hmm.
problem and gets paid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say there's definitely some truth to that. There are a couple exceptions. Like, for example, there's nonprofit people who pay themselves out a lot of money, and they're legally allowed to do that. And there's one lady I was talking to, even though her company is quote unquote a nonprofit, she's an extremely successful politician. So they pay themselves out of the nonprofit. But in theory, yes, what you're saying makes complete sense. If it's a true charity, where they don't get paid a massive amount of money out of their charity, quote unquote, then yes, I would agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Over the course now that you've known this philosopher, this realization, there's this quote that we need to be reminded more often than we need to be taught. How do you, in this world of distractions and a lot of things happening, how do you keep this philosophy front and center such that when you're going through a lot, when you're going through things in your day to day, you always remind yourself that, okay, success is moving from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm?
Say I just kind of keep things in mind. I do a couple things actually. So one, I like to put it as like a screensaver on my like WhatsApp and on my phone. I often do that. I move around like different quotes, sort of remind me of my end goal. And beyond that, what I do is I have a list of goals which I create on like a monthly and yearly basis. So as long as I stay aligned, even if there's different failures along the way, as long as I'm making progress every single day towards those goals, then it makes me like a lot more successful. Because a lot of the time, what people do, and I would say this is a massive mistake, is they create these massive, massive goals and they don't split them up into digestible pieces. So what I do is I create very small digestible like pieces of each particular goal. And this goal could be not necessarily even like business related. It could be as simple as like, fixing stuff in relationships and stuff and like that in life and putting that into normal size things you can do on a daily basis. So as long as I'm working hard towards those goals, even if I come across failures long term, I know I will be successful because most people are going throughout life without a compass. They don't even know where they're going. So then instead of them knowing where they're going, there's someone else or some entity which is pushing them in another direction. And eventually that will lead to suboptimal outcomes in terms of them not even being close to their goals.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation. If someone, let's say, let's assume, right, that this philosophy was something that was on sale, in the market, right? Let's say they're selling this philosophy, and you're like, oh, success is moving from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm, and someone's about to like purchase this philosophy. What would be like the warning you give to them that, okay, yeah, as much as this is a good product, you have to keep this in mind and this in mind and this is in mind?
Yeah, so I would say that you got to keep in mind that the idea is not just to keep failing and failing and failing. The idea is to fail and to learn. That's the way I look at it. So if you fail without perceiving what made you to fail to begin with, then you're doomed to make that mistake over and over. So that's like the major caveat. And I learned that pretty early on, actually, that I made the same mistakes multiple times. And I'm like, wait a second. What if every time I failed, I made a mental note of like, okay, not going to make that mistake again? Then it's a lot easier to look at failure because then you realize like, okay, that was an expensive learning lesson, but so was so many things like going to university, buying a house. There's a lot of expensive lessons, and there's always going to be like difficult situations in life, depending on where you are at. But if you focus and you stay focused on like your actual goals and you're willing to adjust, then you'll be fine.
Oh, it's a good thing you mentioned learning lessons and taking mental notes and all that. One of the things I've noticed and a lot of persons make is that those who attempt to learn from experience, they learn the wrong lesson. I'll give an example. Let's say someone is okay. Let's give electricity for example, right? Let's say someone gets electrocuted, right? Now, the lesson someone would learn from such instance would be there's so many lessons you could learn, but a wrong lesson to learn would be that, oh, we should never have anything to do with electricity. All our children to come, they should forbid electricity. If anyone ever tries to use electricity or touch electricity, we should forbid them, ban them, banish them, and stuff like that. Now that's a lesson to learn. Well, of course, maybe they had a terrible encounter with electricity. Probably they touched what they were not supposed to touch, and someone got really shocked. But they learned a lesson, but that's the wrong lesson to learn. You get
Correct.
because so I feel that in business, in personal life, sometimes we have experience and then we learn certain lessons, but then the lessons we learn is the wrong lesson. to learn entirely.
Agree. And that's the reason why you kind of have to look at it from like an outside perspective. Like even people in marketing, we've reached out to them and they're a quote unquote lesson. So they paid some sort of marketing company in the past who didn't make them any money. So they tell me based on that, based on like a couple bad experiences we have, therefore marketing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then the way I usually counter that, I'd be like, okay, well, how do you explain all these major companies out there like Coca-Cola and all these major brands which spend billions of dollars every single year on marketing? Are you telling me they just like to spend billions of dollars on nothing? And and that usually kind of like eliminates that particular thing. So you gotta be able to look in deeper rather than making an irrational statement, spending time kind of contemplating, okay, why did this failure actually happen, rather than just letting fear control you, because that's like one of the easiest things to do is to just curl up into a ball and be like, okay, I'm just never gonna try that again, I'm never gonna start a business again. So you got to look from like outside of fear, which can be a very difficult thing to do, and analyze what was the real reason for the failure. And I had a mentor a while back who I, I I failed repeatedly in many aspects and stuff because I didn't believe that certain things were possible. And then he kind of created this like outside perspective, and he's like, okay, the real reason why you're failing is because of like the habits, things you're doing on a regular basis. It's not because, you're not capable of doing this. Just your current you is not good enough. And that really helped me a lot because prior to that, I literally had no perspective on things. Like I probably would have just ended up making like working at McDonald's or doing some sort of thing, which I had no desire to do. No, nothing against people who do that, but I had no desire to do that, and I wanted to be successful, but I had this misconception that it was impossible, and that no matter how hard I tried, I would just be doomed to fail. And that's just because of early lessons where I would fail, and I perceived it as like some sort of like outside world, which is like everyone was against me, and that would be the wrong type of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing you mentioned marketing, for example. Let's say someone spends, okay, I'll give an example. Let's say someone spends, let's say $1 as an ad budget every day on a particular set of ad, and now they're not getting any clients, they're not getting anything. They're like, ads doesn't work. That's the wrong lesson. Probably you're like, okay, wait, maybe we're spending a very little amount for the thing to even start working. Like, what about put $50 per day to see if it works or not? And then because learning the wrong lesson is even worse than not learning any lesson. Because that
I
itself stops
totally
you.
agree.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you say that sometimes we analyze lessons, we learn things out of fear. Because probably we've got our fingers burnt. We're like, no, fire is evil. We shouldn't use fire. And I'm like, dude, that's coming out of fear. I know the stuff is, yeah, you got burnt, but this thing is bigger than what happened to you, the experience that happened to you. Of course, the experience you had was valid, but this stuff is bigger. And if you allow that perspective to like affect you, you might not really get the potential benefit of using fire, for example. Like I mean, you could get you people use it at home to warm and heat the house. People use it to cook their food, so many benefits of fire. But if you've had that terrible experience at the first start, you're like, nah, no, 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 there's nothing you're going to tell me.
Right, right. And you gotta be really careful, especially in business, because there's a lot of failure which comes along, and it's very easy to get afraid based on certain things. People who are entering into business or any new types of things often come across like certain obstacles, which can be scary at times. And it's very easy if you're not like, thinking from like outside perspective to let fear just control you. And that's not a lesson. That's just being controlled by fear. So it's important to tell that distinction.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. Because we often need to ask ourselves, is this coming out of a place of fear or is this coming out of a place of curiosity? What have I tried? Is this really true? You understand? We always want to make sure that we question our beliefs, because sometimes the things that hold us are the things that even affect our thought system in the first place, that we do not even think to question in the first place. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you got to really question everything. That's extremely important to be able to question a lot of different aspects because most of the stuff which people think have been ingrained into their thinking from like a young age. And you got to question some of it because some of it's just inherently not true. There's like a lot of things which I was told, at least from a young age, and for like a lot of people, when it comes to inherent quote unquote truths, which are not actually true.
Yeah. What's one final advice or message you have for those listening to the podcast right now?
I would say that you should just do things in terms of like go out and actually like start that business, do just go out and do things and be okay with failure. That's what I would say is just go out and do things, be okay with failure because the most painful thing, which a lot of people don't understand, is looking back 30, 40, 50 years later and wondering, having massive regret. And I've seen that unfortunately with like a lot of people in their older age, and it's a painful expression to say the least. So I would just go out there, fail a bit and be okay with it, and then learn from those failures.
Thank you so much, Aidan, for coming on the podcast. Where can listeners learn more about what you do and check out all your projects?
I mean, they can check out my LinkedIn, Aidan Sowa. It's pretty simple to find me on LinkedIn. And also, if they want to figure out for some reason like about the dialer solution, it's the zotodialer.co is where they can find that.
Yeah, thank you so much once again for coming on the podcast. Thanks for listening to Relatable Wisdom. If you found something meaningful in this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.